Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Senate Education. It's 3:02 on March 31st, and we are moving on to school construction bill sent to us by the House, H 426. Senators will recall, excuse me, that yesterday we heard from Mr. Carroll, who is the chair of the State Board of Education. He had requested that, and I guess I would just put this on your list, Ms. Wasserman. He asked that we shift some of the roles and duties from the agency of, from the State Board of Education to the Agency of Education, and the committee will return to that topic and question perhaps as early as we are finished with Ms. Ryan, who will hopefully weigh in on that for us. So with that, Cassandra Ryan, thanks so much for joining us from the agency. You're responding, of course, as you know, to H 426, and the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Yes, so as I was just explaining to Senator Campion, I am the relatively newly back to the Agency of Education Director of Regulatory Compliance, and one of the smaller pieces of the role of the team that I am over is the school facilities. So that sort of came upon the team, as you know, in roughly 2008, the suspension, the moratorium, if you will, on school construction aid. So we do, at this point, we do implement the school emergency construction aid on our team. We also are responsible for the excess spending exclusion approvals for our school districts to help them out with that. So I'm happy to be here. My history is that I was hired for the school construction program originally with the state. So I'm hopeful that that experience will be helpful in answering your questions today.
Great. So if you want to just, I'm sorry if I interrupted you, go ahead.
No. I know this is always so hard, right?
Oh, yeah, no problem. Yeah, so we're just looking for the agency's thoughts, opinions, ideas as it relates to this.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I do believe that it is time, right? The capital outlay formula is very out of date. It has been out of date since, well, it hasn't been updated since 2009. That was the last time that any activity occurred to update the formulas inside of there and the square footage costs. As well, with ESSER funding coming in and the potential for school construction projects to begin happening in our schools, I think updating those minimum and maximum thresholds would be very valuable to our schools. They often look at those as a guide. I'm not sure that was what they were ever intended to be as far as as far as the square footage, they really are a minimum, not a goal. But I can see the value in getting this document up to date. And it will be great. It will also, honestly, it would help with the approval of the excess spending calculations as we set the maximum cost for state participation. It is admittedly stale.
Mm-hmm. So one of the questions
I do want to sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I think I have a bit of a delay with my internet. So what I was going to say is, though, that it is a body of work. So the updating of all of this really is a large amount, it's a large lift. It's and it's expertise at the moment that the agency probably doesn't have because we no longer have school construction focused staff. And I think that you did recognize that it is a fairly large lift to get this updated. It's a research project, if you will.
But the agency is supporting the bill, and the one question that we have had is whether or not, as Mr. Carroll outlined in his testimony yesterday, if the agency is comfortable with making the switch as he referenced in his testimony.
Yeah, so I unfortunately did not know that that had happened, so I apologize for that. So I did not prepare a response on that, but I would be happy to do so and get back to the committee on that. I just want to make sure that I understand exactly what he's shifting. There is it's always an interesting relationship between the state board and the Agency of Education when rules need to be updated. So I just want to make sure I would fully understand what he's asking for before I comment. And I apologize that I didn't know that in advance.
No problem at all. Ms. Wasserman, were you there when Mr. Carroll testified? Would you remind us what exactly his request is so I don't misspeak?
I actually, unfortunately, was not there during
Oh.
that testimony.
I see Senator Pertwee, he recalls. Please go ahead, Senator.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's little section B, which really has the board of education shall update and adopt the capital outlay financing formula. There might be something else, but I thought it was that one.
Yeah, I'm getting.
So Becky Wasserman, Legislative Counsel, I can confirm that that is the area where the state board is being authorized or being asked to do something. I guess, and I think AOE would be able to speak to this more. I guess my initial reaction would be that this is a state board rule. So I think the entity that is issuing the rule has the responsibility for adopting it. So I'm not sure what assistance he was requesting.
If I may, Ms. Ryan, would you mind having your agency or you personally talking with the chair of the state board and seeing if the two of you can come to an agreement on what should happen or shouldn't happen? And if you would be so kind as to coming back perhaps on Friday or early next week and just give us, you and Mr. Carroll or one of you can just give us an update on what your agreement might be. Senator Perchlik, you look skeptical.
Well, this gets to a lot of these issues because the board has no staff. So even if when we tell the board to do it, they just turn around and tell the agency like, hey, you're gonna have to help us with this because they're a group of volunteers basically. So that's why it would be good to clarify that really these belong with AOE. But I get the point that if it's their rule currently in statute, why you want them to be the ones to fix it.
And there is $100,000 appropriated to the state board to hire someone to help them adopt this rule.
Ms. Ryan?
Yeah, if I may, thank you. So I appreciate the opportunity to allow me to go back and to work with Chair Carroll on that, because I think that will be probably the fastest way to get us a response. So just to see what he's thinking. Again, it is always this interesting dynamic between a state board who actually owns the rules and then the agency who may have the staff or even the expertise as far as the administration of those rules. So I think that will work wonderfully, and I would be delighted to come back Friday or early next week at your convenience with your schedule.
Why don't we leave it that you will contact Jeannie Lowell, our committee assistant, and when it works for you. I mean, we hope to advance this perhaps by the end of next week, if we're lucky. So that certainly gives you some time, and we'd be very grateful if you'd be willing to negotiate that.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a perfect plan, actually. So that's great.
Questions for Ms. Ryan? Okay, Senator Lyons? No, okay. Questions for Ms. Wasserman? I'm sorry, Senator Lyons, you are now.
No, I was just going to say this is, it always feels deja vu over again. I hope we can get to a good place.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. Okay. Yes, Senator Perchlik.
I have a question about the bill in this consultant that the $100,000 that the board can hire just to do the rewriting of the capital outlay financing formula. But I wondered if that consultant, it seems like in 3, down below, or, where they're doing an RFI. I think it's in section 3, maybe. I'm trying to find it. Yeah, where AOE,
It's on the bottom of page, it's section 3, bottom of page 3.
yeah.
Is
And
that
maybe,
3D?
yes, but they're working
Yeah.
with BGS and to issue this RFI or RFP.
RFP, yeah.
Rebecca, do you know if they were thinking that that consultant would help in this? Like they're going to do that first? Because it seems like you might want a consultant to help you write this RFP.
So I'm not sure I actually stated my name for the record. So Becky Wasserman, Legislative Counsel. So I actually think the intent was that these are two separate consultants. So I think the expertise that they're looking for the facilities conditions assessment is somebody who has more engineering experience. And then the consultant for the rulemaking would be a separate set of skills to assist with more of the drafting and the research related to that rule. So I don't think the intent here was that it was going to be the same individual or individuals to do those tasks. It is referencing section 3D just to reference the pot of money that's going to be used for both of them. But that it's not, I do think it's perhaps a separate set of skills for both of these tasks.
I wasn't thinking it was the same consultant that you would hire, but that the consultant in 2 would be helpful to write the RFP to hire the consultant in 3 is what I was thinking. And like, are they going to be completely separate, or I guess
it is not drafted to have that person assist with the RFP. I think the BGS is listed there because they typically draft RFPs and they do have the experience with doing facilities conditions assessments for state buildings. So the thought was that they had that expertise to add to the process in this context.
Mr. Chair, I have and I think somebody answered this question, but I forgot, and maybe it was Councilor Wasserman, on what is the capital outlay financing formula? Can you describe it?
Maybe Ms. Ryan can describe it better than I can, but I think it's sort of a calculation of how you figure out like the minimum and maximum sort of square footage needs for whatever is necessary in a school, like a classroom or perhaps a bathroom or a cafeteria, those whatever areas are used in a school building. But
Ms. Ryan,
I will let the expert explain it more than me.
No, I actually think you did a great job. You get the nuts and bolts of it. It's also though it's really about making sure that as plans are reviewed that we're looking at those minimum square footages as well as the maximum costs that would be associated with a project. So again, even though we have we now have a situation with COVID, which has really drastically changed the landscape of our classrooms, and the minimum square footage needs may be changing, right? The appropriateness of our classroom sizes. So you're exactly right, though. It is a calculation that considers the minimums during plan review, and then the maximums that would be based on a student calculation that would be based on, a student enrollment number or a forecasting number, and then applied with a square footage cost that would come up with a maximum cost for state participation, which is that is a term that we used in school construction when there was construction aid. And what it meant was it would be that ceiling that we said, okay, this is the maximum cost that the state will actually participate in building. It did not limit, and still does not limit, a district's ability to build beyond that cap. It just sets the cap for which state participation was available.
Is it just the financial formula, or is it also actually setting the rules for what is an appropriate amount of space? It's both.
Yeah, no, that's a super good distinction, and I'm glad that you asked that. It really was completely designed for the financial calculation of the state's participation in a process. So in some cases, for instance, if you built a gymnasium, that would sort of chip away at the available costs that you would have. And so that's a really good distinction to make, is the original capital outlay as it exists right now is very much tied to the school construction financial grant program, not necessarily a standard that you would use to build. So there is a little bit of a nuance there.
But you're kind of coming up with the dollar figure knowing, okay, we want classrooms, square foot per child to be X, so therefore the dollar amount will be Y. And that's why I see a connection to 3, because part of what the RFP is writing is saying, we want somebody to review school facility conditions, space utilization, and the suitability of the facilities. But if the, child per square foot is changing over there with the board's consultant, it just seems like we'd want to make sure that the two, where they are, overlap. And I'm understanding maybe the overlap is less than I thought, but if there is overlap there, we want to make sure we want the left hand to know what the right hand is doing.
Yes, I mean, I would agree that as proposed, it might be slightly adjusting the use of the capital outlay, which would, certainly benefit from that coordination.
And a person want to think about making some changes, to language. Of course, we'll certainly consider them and just give it some thought.
Okay.
Senator Hooker.
I'm just wondering, Ms. Ryan, about the changing landscape that you referred to due to the pandemic, and how you think that will affect the this study or this assessment. Is the timing something that we should look at? Do we wait to see what's happening because of the pandemic, or can we go ahead and go through the assessment quickly, as soon as possible?
Yeah. What I read was that the changes would be gearing towards a 2023 completion date, which, to answer your question more specifically, many of our districts may have already begun or even completed some adjustments to their facilities. There are some federal grant funds that are available right now to our LEAs, and they may be, we don't know yet. We haven't received all of their plans, but we are expecting that at least some will be making some adjustments to their building that may increase the classroom space, or may add some modulars, or replace some modulars with permanent building structure in order to be successful at at further distancing the students in the school building.
Okay.
So you're right, timing does become a little bit of a interesting rub there, because those projects will be occurring prior to the completion of the update to the capital outlay.
Okay, thanks.
Are you thinking, Senator Hooker, that it might make sense to make a date change on this so that to avoid that rub?
Well, I would defer to Ms. Ryan about that. Do you think that would be helpful?
Well, I think setting standards is always helpful for folks, because then they have the bar sort of identified, right? And they're not guessing as to whether or not they're building the project that is the best project to build. So I think it could be very valuable, though I also want to recognize that this is a body of work, and it will require some time to gather all of the information. So I will also do some thinking on that question, and when I come back next week, I might be able to give you a little better thoughts on that.
Senator Persley.
Thank you. I have a question on section 6, the capital improvement plan, capital operations and improvement plan. So it seems like this is a new plan, so it's a new term, because I had somebody a constituent of mine emailing me and saying they work in school facilities and they didn't know what that meant. They were like, they said there was something else called a facility operating plan, but they were wondering what the difference between a facility operations plan and a capital operations and improvement plan. But maybe it is a new thing, and that's what we're doing in B, having AOE create this template. Is that right?
Yeah, so I think that this is a new concept that from the testimony I heard, some schools do this already, but it's not required of schools. And it's more addressing a long-term, it's more addressing schools needing to do long-term capital planning. And the idea is that AOE will be, as you said in subsection B, sort of prescribing what needs to be in that. And this section is actually not in effect until July 1st, 2023. So there's some time for AOE to put that together and then for schools to then respond to put their plans in place.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so Ms. Ryan, we will have you back. We'll schedule a time with Jeannie to answer those questions. We're going to continue taking testimony on this bill this week. And we'll look forward to having your additional thoughts perhaps sometime next Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And feel free to reach out if there's additional questions that come up that I could help you with.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I too need to dig into this a little bit more than I have. And so I may be shooting some additional questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I love to talk all things capital outlay. That would be fun.
Great, great,
Thank you.
great. And Ms. Wasserman, thanks so much. Great.
Thanks.
Okay, we are waiting for our next group of witnesses. This is continuing our conversation about COVID relief funding. And we have Heather, is it pronounced Boucher or Bushy? Bushy? Senator Perchlik, I'm seeing E. Bushy. Okay, thank you.
That's what I remember hearing before, but I could be wrong.
Okay. In from the agency and Jill Campbell as well. And I think Mark Pearl and Brianna Parker will be with us just as we continue to kind of educate ourselves around what's happening with federal dollars coming in. So they're expected at 3:30. So why don't we take another quick little break and come right back right before 3:30.